Hi, I'm Sam Pritchard from People in Paddocks, and this is box 4 of the 10-box audit framework. This is training and competency. One Year 9 student changed the way I produce and design training materials forever. Tom had grown up on a family farm, so he was probably driving tractors from the age of 3. So really it was a win-win for us and for him, and he wanted to join our harvest crew. His mum made contact with me before he started and asked if she could attend the induction day to help him with reading. Tom is dyslexic. I had only just finished my very elaborate 75-page employee policy manual and safe work procedures and suddenly realized that this was of no benefit to Tom in its current format. When I then did some more investigation internally, I found that in fact there was a good 30% of our employees across Australia who were also dyslexic. The excitement of this discovery is a whole nother discussion. Just quickly, have you heard that it's rumoured NASA at one stage employed 50% of their workers were dyslexic because of their incredible problem-solving skills and spatial awareness ability, very important traits in our industry. And we potentially have a goldmine of dyslexic thinkers in our industry. But anyway, back to Tom. Tom was and is an incredible young man who taught me so much. As I further researched into dyslexia and how different minds read information differently and see different patterns, I started changing the way I presented my training materials, like turning a wordy safe work procedure into a short and engaging training video that can also be viewed in many languages. And here's what's interesting about what the law says. It is insufficient to simply give a worker the procedure and ask them to acknowledge that they understand and are able to perform it. Training, instruction, and information must be provided in a form that can be understood by all workers. So what is the definition of training when it comes to the law? The provision of any information, training, instruction, or supervision that is necessary to protect all persons from risks to their health and safety arising from work carried out as part of the conduct of the business or undertaking. And the requirement to provide training applies to all people that visit your farm, whether they be workers, whether they be contractors, whether they be labour hire, whether they be visitors. Everybody needs to be trained in your safe work procedures to a certain degree, depending on the reason for their visit and the work that they'll be doing. We're focusing on workers and contractors, so here are some different times and ways that you can provide training and ensure that people are constantly receiving instruction throughout their employment or time with you. And the first opportunity is at induction. Induction is a process. It's not just one day or 1 hour as soon as they arrive. Regardless of their experience, it's your job to ensure that you train these people in how you want things done, using your equipment and with your unique hazards and risks on your farm. There are 3 steps to my induction, so let me walk you through them. Step 1 is day 1, which is induction. There's a whole video on YouTube that I've produced on inductions, so you can watch that over on our channel. But the most important thing is to, on day 1, ensure that it's a day where you have a bit of free time. It doesn't have to be on a Monday. If you know that Monday is going to be stretched for you, make it on a Wednesday or whatever day of that week where you're going to have time to spend with that person. I have an induction checklist that you can download. It's for free on our website. So grab the link and jump on and grab that. So starting off with induction when they arrive, most farm hands or agricultural workers are not so comfortable sitting behind a desk or in a formal situation. We're used to being outdoors. So start with outdoors. Take them for a walk around the property or a drive around the property. Give them a bit of a lay of the land and point out some emergency procedures as you go around. So you might point out the evacuation point or points. You might point out some first aid kits or PPE. You'll come back and revisit these later, but it's just a really good overview just to have a little bit of small talk and show them the lay of the land. And if you bump into any staff along the way, then introduce them to the staff, but let the staff know before they arrive that there is a new person starting, so they're not questioning who you're introducing them to. And then once you've shown them around, let's go back and grab a coffee, preferably at the kitchen table. It doesn't need to be in a formal office. A kitchen table would be great. We even did this at the corporate farm. We had a staff room, so I preferred to conduct inductions in there, grab a hot drink or a cold drink and sit down with them. But if it is an office environment, then at least sit on the same side as them, so it's not so formal, and just keep it a little bit relaxed. So we're going to start, you'll grab your induction checklist so you make sure that you check everything off, and we're going to go through contracts, etc. But we're not talking about that today. We're talking more about the training side. So we're going to talk about the employee policy manual and your rules essentially of your business. Now there are a lot of rules and a lot of policies that we need to talk about here. So it is a big document and it is about 75 pages, and we do need them to sign it at the end of the day. But I talk one-on-one with my employee policy manual, and we go through each policy in summary, but we have a good chat about it, and I ask any questions as we go and then ask for their feedback too. For instance, if we're talking about fire equipment, I'll ask whether they've had to use a fire extinguisher before and how that ended, and give them a little rundown if they haven't of how you use a fire extinguisher. When we talk about first aid kits, we'll talk about snake bites and if they know how to treat a snake bite, and we talk about the fact that we're going to be looking at some videos about how to treat a snake bite, etc. So it's a whole conversation where our policies end up connecting with our safe work procedures, which end up connecting with that tour that we did around the farm, and so everything all comes together on day one. So we go through the employee policy manual, tick. Then we go through the safe work procedures and emergency procedures, which I present as short and engaging training videos on a screen. So they watch the videos and then we talk about them and ask some questions. Through the Pippa app, that automatically gets updated in their training records. So once they've watched the video, it automatically updates and automatically sets an annual refresher so that they need to refresh those procedures once a year. Next, we're going to ascertain training gaps. So have a conversation with them about what training certificates they have, get copies of these certificates or licenses so that you have them on file. Particularly, we want to note expiry dates to ensure that we remind our team members to get certificates updated before they expire. We're also going to talk about our systems and how to report a hazard or a near miss, and to make sure that they communicate with the whole team, which leads us to communication. So we're going to ask them how they best receive communication and instructions. Do they prefer a phone call? Do they prefer a text? Do they prefer face-to-face? Everybody is different. It's really important that we acknowledge this, because again, there's a whole nother video on, does your team actually listen to your instructions? Well, if they don't, it may be because of the way that you're communicating your instructions. So really important at induction that we learn a lot about this person and how they prefer to receive instructions. And just to touch on contractors here, we want to put a contractor through an induction as well. So again, on our website, we have a free contractor induction form, which takes them through different questions depending on the answers that they give throughout the form. So check that out. And don't assume if a contractor asks to use your forklift that they have a forklift license. You need to check that they actually do and get a copy of that. So step 2 is during our first few weeks, and this is where we're going to do a lot of show and tell. So preferably we will get them to shadow us on machinery, on procedures, on equipment, on whatever the task might be that we need them to learn. Get them to shadow yourself and any others before you actually put them in the hot seat to do the task itself. Please don't throw them straight on machinery or straight into the task. It's not fair on them, and it's a recipe for disaster. I have seen it all happen. Then once we've spent some time supervising them in the role, we're going to do a competency check. So that takes us to step 3, our competencies. A competency check proves that we not only trained the new person, gave them instruction, and then supervise them in the role, but then we also check to watch that they took on the instruction, that they understood the safe work procedures in particular, and that we gave them any feedback if necessary. Auditors will ask for this. They will ask for proof that you actually trained and can prove that you ensured that they were doing the task properly and safely. And training is not a one-off event, it should be ongoing. We want to build a growth mindset into our team. People want to be good at their job, so help them do that. A great time for ongoing training is at toolbox meetings. So once a month, you might have your toolbox meetings weekly, but once a month you might pick a topic to conduct a little bit of training on. If, for instance, you've had a notifiable incident, it's a good idea to pick that particular topic for your training. As an example, at the corporate farm, we had a trailer tip over with chemical IBCs in the back. We conducted some on-site training with utes and trailers and electric brakes, and the guys set up some cones in the yards, and all of us, including admin staff, because sometimes we need to help with transporting heavy bulks, and we had to drive at speed and then stop suddenly, and then try the brake system if we were pulling up gradually and slowly, just to get a feel for that difference. But it was a really good experience for all of us, just to get that feeling of what it was like. And you can do this at your own farm too. So if there's been a situation, conduct some training, because a lot of people learn by doing rather than just listening or seeing. Some people actually need to do it. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about your toolbox topic for the month. Pre-season is another great opportunity for ongoing training. So if you're coming up to a busy season, then look at bringing the team together and talking about the safe work procedures that are relevant to what's coming up. So if it's harvest, we'll talk about fire safety, we'll talk about overhead power lines, we'll talk about snake bites and emergency procedures if there is a fire. For new staff, it's a great opportunity to actually walk around and show them how to use that pump or fuel bowser, and to conduct pre-start checks. At one of the farms last year, we had quite a few new backpackers start, so we decided to get the mechanic to show the new backpackers how to conduct a thorough pre-start check on a ute. And it was very interesting with how many permanent staff stuck their heads over the shoulders too, to have a look and see what was being taught and said. So sometimes people get to a point where they're a little bit embarrassed to ask. So instead of allowing that to happen, just ensure this training is always ongoing, and don't assume that somebody knows, because sometimes people have been there that long that they've either forgotten or it's just been too long and they feel embarrassed to ask. Another type of training is external training. Being in the high-risk industry that we're in, we do require certain licenses and certificates, and every state is different. But at the end of the day, if you're working in a silo or a vat or a confined space, you're going to need a confined space certificate. If you're handling agricultural chemicals, then you're going to need a chemical certification. There's also a new certificate called a mental health first aid certificate, and I highly recommend it. I did the course, and only a day after I had completed the course, I needed that information at a performance review that quickly turned into a discussion about suicide. And using the knowledge from that course, I was able to get this particular worker to the doctor that afternoon and into the care that she needed. Years later, she is thriving and now a manager at a very high profile organization. So it worked, and I highly recommend you at least have one person from your team complete that mental health first aid course. And then there's career growth training. So at every performance review, I always ask the team what growth they're looking for, where they want to be in 5 years, what sort of development they would like help with. It might be a wool classing certificate, it might be grain marketing that they want to get into, it might be leadership. So we can look into different courses for our team and help them to achieve the goals that they want to achieve. When you invest in your workers' careers, they invest their time and their passion into your business. And also consider internal succession training. Train your farm hands into farm managers, train your farm managers into leadership skills. Always be looking to see if there's somebody that can come up the ranks in your business, so that you are always prepared if somebody were to leave. Build your team's capabilities so that your farm doesn't rely on one strong person. Now, with all this talk about training and potentially you paying for these courses, I have an important note that has saved a lot of farms a lot of money and a lot of frustration. have a training repayment clause in your contracts. And I'm no lawyer, so ensure that you get legal advice for your own state and your own situation. But essentially what we put into our contracts is a repayment plan. If the worker completes the training and leaves your employment within 3 months, you might ask them to repay the training in full. But if they leave within 12 months, you might say that that's a win-win. You've benefited, they've benefited, and all is okay. And then have a bit of a pro rata repayment in between. And then documentation is what turns your training into compliance. Following a notifiable incident, an auditor will ask, prove that you actually trained that person, that worker, in a safe way to operate that machinery. Prove that you actually trained that person to handle cattle safely, or show me their chemical certificate. If you can't, then that's a gap, and there will be legal consequences for not protecting your team member. So make sure that you document every training session that you run. I find most farms are doing some sort of training, but the gap is always in the documentation and the competency checks. And you might think that I keep running these videos as a promo for Pippa. Well, it sounds that way, but it's through frustration and it's through my own experience that I developed Pippa to plug all of these gaps. And of the 10 boxes of this audit framework, Pippa answers all of them. So on the training side, if you just want to set and forget, all you need to do is set up an employee and Pippa takes care of the rest. Even sends the notifications to the worker each year to do their refresher training, reminds them of certificates that are about to expire, and keeps you updated along the process. And for a new worker, it allocates all the training that they need to do and ensures that they watch all the videos or otherwise chases them up to remind them. So check out Pippa. Now, if you haven't really done much training on your farm, this might all sound a little bit overwhelming. So for this week, start with your 3 to 5 most riskiest tasks on your farm and think about whether people have actually been trained in those. And if they haven't, then you need to start training them in those ones first. So write down those 3 to 5 risky tasks, write down the people that perform those tasks, and you might find on our website that there are already some training resources available. There are lots of other websites. We have a page on our site under resources where there's links to lots of different agricultural companies and industry bodies that do provide free resources. So check that out this week so that you can start getting your training under control. You can also take the free audit quiz on our website to see where your farm sits right now with compliance. Or if you have some questions, you can jump on our virtual coffee sessions that happen every Wednesday from 12:30 to 1:30 Eastern Standard Time. And I will be there to answer any questions that you have. The link is in the comments. Next week, we're going to be talking about risks and hazards. So get on to your training this week and we'll see you next week for a new session. And as always, have fun and stay safe.